Hello, welcome to the Edmunds CarCast podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndre, here with Alistair Weaver. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Matt. Yeah, fighting a bit of a cold, but struggling on manfully.
That's just because you have kids. I haven't had a cold in like 10 years.
Mate, everybody's just gone back to school, and it's just a petri dish. So the
Yeah.
6-year-old got sick, then my 3.5-year-old got sick. My wife kind of just about managed, just about holding on, and then this morning I woke up, I was like, I don't feel good. So
Yeah.
I've smashed the vitamin C, but I don't get like babysitter come in and look after me and feed me and look after me on the sofa. I'm here doing a podcast, so what can you do?
Yep. You got
So if I sound a bit nasally, that's why. I'll do my best to muscle through.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. Glad to have you here. And stuff going on. We've got
Huge week,
we
huge.
yeah, just all of a sudden it came up. I checked a few days ago and I was like, it's boring. This week's nothing's happening. But and I realized there's shows happening, there's auto shows happening, there's announcements being made, just not in my neighborhood.
It was really interesting because we I'm not going to re litigate the whole idea of the end of the auto show, but it's the Munich Auto Show next week. We've got our head of news Steve Ewan going out there, but it's there's really big news from Germany's big three, and whether they've been had a degree of sort of political pressure or whatever around the auto show, we got to make some noise. But yeah, really big week because both Mercedes, BMW, and Audi have all basically come out with vehicles that said this is what our design language of the future. And in layman's speak, what that means is this is, we are going to develop three new models and say this is what all the cars of the future are going to look like. And they do this kind of almost once a generation. And, BMW, Audi, and Mercedes have all had this kind of slightly controversial aesthetic for a few years. And they brought in, certainly in Audi's case, big name new designer. And it's like, okay, this is our first effort at the next generation
Yeah.
of cars. So super interesting to see.
Let's start with BMW. What do you think?
Why not?
All
Because this is
right,
probably
start
the
with
first
BMW. And I'm
one
going to
that's
load it up on the
the
screen.
it's. I do apologize because we're listening. Most people are listening to this as a podcast, and we're about to talk about design. So we're going to do our best to explain what we're seeing. If you're watching on YouTube, you get a better sense of it. But we're going to do our best to talk you through this. So BMW, for some time, BMW has been talking about, they've been seeing the what they've been calling the Neue class or new class in English. So we've seen the last couple of years concept cars, prototypes knocking around, which showed off a hint of what was to come. And the iX3 is the first vehicle to kind of show this off in its full light. The X3, which only recently went on sale, was kind of like halfway house. It introduced some of the new language, but didn't go the whole way. The iX3, which is the EV, is the first one really to demonstrate what BMWs of the future will look like. And it's radically different. Gone is that sort of humongous grille that has been a character of every BMW for about the last few years. It's now much more kind of classical, much smaller kidney grills. It actually takes it back to more of a kind of an 80s aesthetic for me. Smaller lights, smaller grill, but still very distinctively BMW. I like it.
So when BMW was getting that very like hard edge, like flat panels, harder edges, it looked very sort of stealth bomber-ish. This is a little bit softer. You can see some of those hard edges, but now it's sort of in between the all the softer edges and the super hard edge. It's a little bit softer. So yes, the front end much less polarizing. I'm not going to say everyone's going to love it, but you maybe just dislike it less.
I think it depends on the perspective. The shot we've got on screen at the moment is the front three quarter, and that to me feels like the sort of the most awkward angle. I love it from the front on profile. The rear end is that front end, which has this kind of like quite hunched nose feel, quite
Yeah.
sporting. I think that looks terrific. We got it on screen there, and then the rear end is a little bit more generic, but is clean up. But then, so that's the exterior, and I think all future BMWs, the next X5, etc., will all now echo this language. And I think they've had to, particularly because this is an EV and they're talking about a 400 mile mile range. They've had to kind of do a very kind of difficult job, a fine line between making something that's aerodynamically very efficient to make sure you've got strong range and actually coming up with something that looks cool and people want to buy. And I think the iX3, if you look at the wheels, they're not the most aerodynamic in the world, but they look, they look cool and very BMW-like. So I'm excited by it. And the interior, I know he's flashing up the interior on the screen. The interior is arguably an even bigger step than the exterior. And this
Um,
is where probably the real progress is.
but for those of you just listening, the interior, it's interesting because in one photo, the steering wheel looks like it's upside down. That's the shape of the steering wheel, where it kind of looks like it would, it's a little bigger on the bottom than on the top. But I would say the way they're doing the screens, there's a screen in the middle and then up along the dash under the windshield, similar to what Lincoln was doing. Maybe not quite as big of the screen, like tall of the screen, but if you think of the new Lincoln Navigator, their arrangement of the screen sort of in the middle and then across the dash under the windshield, that's the configuration.
That's right. But although what's curious about it, BMW is calling this panoramic vision, is it's not a screen. Actually, what they've done is to paint the bottom of the well, it is a screen, but it's the windshield, the windscreen, if you like. They painted the bottom of it black, and they're actually projecting the information onto the glass. So if you look at what Lincoln have done, Lincoln have a very small LED that strip that basically runs across the cockpit. Here, BMW is projecting information onto the windshield, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then you've got a screen that looks very Tesla-like in the middle. It's very minimalist. A lot of BMWs recently, you've got all the kind of like weird sort of plastic LED lighting effects, including the new X3. This has really stripped a lot of that away. A lot of the kind of jewelry is gone. It's much more minimalist. It's much more towards kind of Tesla's design aesthetic, but with a little bit more warmth. So you've got a big central screen, and then you've got this kind of strip which takes the place of a head-up display. There's no need for an additional head-up display in the
Yeah.
in the windshield. So I wasn't out there, but Clint Simon on the team, he had a good look round it and was pretty impressed. It's
It it's kind of tough to tell in these photos. We'd have to talk to Clint, like what sort of actual tactile buttons are there. It looks like possibly under the center stack screen there could be something going on there, but I can't say for sure.
yeah, we
If
should maybe
they're
we'll
gonna,
get Clinton next week to talk more about it. But it's definitely gone more towards kind of screen and infotainment Tesla style, but I think they've kept a bit more kind of physical controls because frankly, every time anybody does any customer research, that's what everybody tells them. But this is what BMW interiors will be now: simple screen, this kind of like strip under the dashboard. A little bit of me, I love that. Maybe it's just because my kind of generation, but I love the kind of classic BMW dials of like the 80s and 90s.
yeah.
Remember those? And the type-facing L. So there's no home for those now. That's gone.
Right. So to
This
be
is the
clear,
future.
there isn't sort of a gauge cluster in front of you as you're driving. You just have that, whatever we're calling it, that screen under the windshield, that like kind
Yeah.
of like the Lincoln where you just kind of look ahead and you get, your speed and information, fuel levels and things like that. But
That's right.
okay, so
There's no traditional instrument cluster as you would imagine it. It's a fairly narrow horizontal strip across the top of the fascia, which means that you can't have a big round rev counter in the kind of classic BMW style. So it'll be interesting as they get into like the M models and things like that. How do they do? They're applying this to gas cars as well. How does this apply to rev counters? Will it just be a horizontal strip? Will it? How will they do it? It'll be obviously a digital speedo. So I haven't sort of poked around it yet, but BMW interiors have got so sort of fussy that I think this is kind of a nice cleaning up of what they had. So I'm excited by this car, and
I'm
there's a
I'm
lot.
kind of on board with it overall. I mean, let's get into some of the specs of the vehicle itself, but I I mean, I don't hate this design. I think it's interesting. I definitely would like to see it in person, but I I'm okay with this. Um,
And there's some interesting tech. I mean, I think we say in the piece that's already up on the site that they spent more money on this vehicle than anything else they've ever done because it's really, it's not just from an aesthetic perspective, but also for a lot of technologies setting the tone for the future. So the battery technology has changed. Everything about it basically is new. They're claiming 400 miles of range. But well, I looked at the data for our Edmunds EV range test. The most we've done in the BMW is 377 miles. So they're looking to improve on that with new battery technology. The interesting thing about it for me is obviously BMW already has an EV lineup. They've got the i4, they've got the i5, which is the sedans. Then they've got the iX, which is that fairly challenging looking SUV.
yeah, that's a nice way of
All of
putting it.
which are now old technology.
Yeah.
And the iX has just had a facelift. So you've got to think going forward, is this probably going to go on sale next spring? Initially in a fairly high spec guise, iX350 X Drive, which is probably, I think, about 60 grand, but then it will get cheaper. There'll be lesser versions introduced. So, like, who's going to buy an i4 or an i5 or particularly the iX? Because the iX is more expensive, not a lot bigger, and is yesterday's technology. I think the
Yeah.
reality is you're going to buy the iX3. So, this is the problem with EVs. The technology moves so fast that you're looking at their existing range and saying, well, that's the LCD screen, and now we've all gone LED or OLED or whatever you want to call it.
And this particular one that they put in front of us, you said there could be faster ones, there could be slower ones, more affordable ones, but this is the 108 kilowatt battery, 0 to 60 in about 4.7 seconds. Again, there could be different variations on it after this, but this
This
is
is
sort
the
of setting the
50.
tone.
That's right. This is the 50 X Drive. I think there'll probably be a 40, which might even be two-wheel drive, to get the cost down. Because this is going to compete with the Tesla Model Y. So it's going to probably sit above the Tesla Model Y, price-wise. But that's kind of where they're pitching it. Or, we're about to talk about the new electric GLC Mercedes, and that's obviously in that bucket as well. But things like, the Cadillacs, so it's sort of just above Tesla Model Y.
Yeah. Okay. So, in your opinion, what's the verdict on this new
I haven't
iX?
sat on it yet. Clearly, I haven't driven it, but I like the way it looks. I think I also suspect, and Clint said this, it looks better in real life than it does in pictures, which is true of a lot of modern design. I think the interior is terrific. Lots of new technology. I think it's really interesting.
I think so too. I think it's heading in the right direction. I think the interior looks good. Yes, I'm starting to just get used to these cars with no gauge cluster in front of them. The ones where it's completely gone is a little odd to me. The ones like the Lincoln and now this BMW are a little bit more interesting to me. The Lincoln like took a little getting used to, but then I was fine with just kind of having it a little bit further away, like under the windshield. But interesting. And it's nice to see that we're hitting the 400 mile range mark. I kind of feel like that's where we need to be with this next generation of EVs, the newer technology, whatever's going on with the battery technology. However, they're just improving it overall. We're learning a lot about how they're managing that battery technology, cooling it, heating it, just everything there.
I hope so because
Yeah.
the infrastructure is not getting better. I mean, this will work with the Tesla chargers and it will have the NACS like the Tesla
Yeah.
plug rather than the alternative. But unless the infrastructure gets better, they've got to keep increasing the range.
Without getting into all the details, yes, I just took my truck, my Lightning, out to Palm Springs for an event, and then on the way home, I needed a little bit extra charge. So before I left, I solved my issue on the third EV charger that I stopped at. So it took me 3 tries, but then I found one that was would seem to work. And only because a dude next to me was charging his like Ionic 5 and he's like, this is what I did to get it to work. I was like, all right, because nothing's working the way I was supposed to, and it worked. So
Too
yes.
stressful.
And I see you rolling your eyes. Yes, that's been the narrative of every time we try to go someplace far in an EV. It's been, kind of a debacle. All right. So BMW
Yeah.
makes a big statement out there with a new SUV electric. Mercedes is on board as well.
So Mercedes is also on board, also Munich. So they're all. This almost reminds me of the old days of the Frankfurt Auto Show, where Germany's big three used to build these insane stands, and it was just this appalling kind of like corporate one-upmanship, where obviously like the business case had gone out the window. It was just build the biggest stand, make the biggest noise, and they're all fighting each other. So it feels almost like a return to that. So Mercedes is showing off the GLC EV. Now, what's interesting is over recent years we've had like the EQE, the EQS, and they've had tried to have this different naming structure. Now it sounds like that's gone,
Hmm.
and it's the electric version of the GLC. So again, it's a bit of a kind of shifting paradigm, but this is Mercedes. Although the GLC's been around for what, 2 or 3 years now, this is the first electric version, which is actually a very different. Although it looks quite similar, and we'll come on to that in a minute. This is actually a different car. Now, the old EQC, stay with me. The old EQC was only sold in Europe, wasn't never made it to the US. In the same way that the old iX3 didn't make it to the US. But now this is coming GLC EV. This is also about debuting Mercedes' new design language, and it's called, let me get this right. Where are my notes? It's called Sensual Purity,
Okay.
which is interesting because it doesn't, when you look at the pictures, it doesn't look very pure, and to my eyes, doesn't look very sensual either. It's
Okay. All right.
we're about to
I'm gonna
disagree on. I
load it
know we're
up.
about. I know you disagree on this because we talked about it before we started the podcast. For me, it looks like it's got this slightly sad. I'm gonna try and describe it to you. So, if people have seen the latest generation GLS, which has this very kind of prominent grille that looks a bit almost Audi-esque in the way that it's designed, it's almost like trapezoidal grille. And what it tends to do is sort of like pinch the nose. For me, it looks like a slightly sad dog in that it has this big nose with these little eyes for light, sort of top, coming out of the top of the grill. It's recognizable as a Mercedes, but and it doesn't look, it shares obviously a lot of stuff going on with the GLC, but it has this sort of dog snout grill that reminds me of Audi's a little bit. And then at the rear, it's got stylized LED taillights with the kind of Mercedes star. And Mercedes seems obsessed with branding everything at the moment. We talked about this on a show a couple of weeks ago. Like the Maybach is ridiculous amount of Maybach badges, and now they're desperately trying to bring like the three-pointed star motif into everything, both exterior and interior. So, do you like it? I'm
I'll tell you. I mean, in my parking garage, a neighbor has the the Mercedes SUV, the electric one. I don't even know what it's called now. And it's just a dark blue bubble. It's just like a egg shaped thing with like this
yeah.
smooth. There's no like real character to the grill. It just kind of drops down and it gets smooth and it has like just different, like part of it's black and some of it's painted and but it just looks like the same piece of material. It doesn't change at all. I think this one looks better. I think this is a much nicer, maybe more conventional looking SUV for what they were doing with their EV. I almost like it better. I think I like it better than the iX3 we were just looking at.
So this is the thing with design, right? Isn't it? This is why when we do all our ratings,
Yeah.
we don't include aesthetics in it because it is kind of subjective. You're absolutely right, though, that they've ditched the whole idea. I mean, they're kind of very aerodynamic, almost egg-shaped EQE, and EQS, both the sedan and the SUV, with this super aerodynamic sort of egg shape that just all felt a bit curious and plasticky.
Yeah.
They've obviously gone, okay, people don't want something that looks so obviously kind of EV. So let's make it look like a twist on a traditional GLC, and that's what that's what they've done. And to be honest, that's what they've done with the iX3 as well. It's just that that's the future gas cars will look like that. Arguably the bigger news in on the GLC is inside, because this is where you're seeing the big shift from, Mercedes is going in one direction, BMW is going in a different direction. I'm about to talk about Audi, which seems to be different again. But so Mercedes is, though we've seen it with the CLA, now we're seeing it with this electric GLC. They're just decided that we're basically just gonna put a bigger screen as possible. It's a bit like what the Chinese are doing as well. If you look at some of the Chinese brands, it's like, how big a screen can we stuff into your tele? You got to, sometimes you go to like the pub and it's, the local bar, and they've got my hairdresser actually around, my barber's around the corner. The guy admitted to me, went in and just bought the biggest screen he could afford, and it's like 100 inches or something. It's like the entire wall, and it feels like Mercedes is doing same thing to 39.1 inches. They're calling it a hyper screen. It is optional, so it'll be curious to see what it looks like when you don't have the big screen. But
Right.
this is basically, if the BMWs is a kind of very, 3 inches high and across the top of the fascia. This is a proper big, I don't know how tall it is, but let's say it's kind of, at least a foot tall and spreads the entire width of the car. So as you're sitting, you're just looking at a big telly, basically.
Yes, but the way they have it kind of broken up into sections, kind of like what they were doing now with their screens that kind of have the big screen, is you do have a version of the screen where it has like gauges in front of you. I'm sure you
Yeah.
can change those things to different options and get different information. Um, but you're right. It's a screen that goes from door to door. The AC vents, which look like little turbine engines, are down on the far edges, and then it's just all screen. And it's just a big flat screen going across. But yes, compared to, let's say, the Lincoln and that BMW, imagine that screen going all the way across, but moved forward closer to you where your normal center stack screen would be. It's interesting. I
It
don't
is. So
I
then
don't
all,
see a lot of conventional buttons here either. Maybe there's like something going on in the center console that's probably like you know, maybe there's no auto start stop because it's EV, but something going on there, maybe some sort of
probably, I think it's just probably menu buttons to
yeah,
shortcut
just
to
different
the main
menus.
thing. I mean, basically, what you've got is a giant screen, charging ports for your other screens, i.e., your cell phone, and then a couple of cup holders. And yeah, that's it. I suspect those buttons in the middle are probably kind
Yeah.
of drive modes and everything else. So it's, it is again, it's minimalist in one sense, in that you haven't got like this armada of buttons, but it's not minimalist in that when you turn it on, you've got this huge graphical interface that stretches, across the car. And there's a lot of talk about, oh, well, we dim different bits and we do this and we do that, but it's still pretty distracting to have that much information in front of you. And I personally, I prefer the BMW thing. I kind of like a cleaner interior where you just don't feel kind of slightly overwhelmed by giant screens and flashing things and all the rest of it.
It's a lot to take in. When you first start getting into it, you feel like you're supposed to look at the entire screen, and I don't know that you are. I think you're supposed to just kind of focus like what's on in front of you, and then the passenger gets this screen, and that's another discussion, I think. Does the passenger need a screen? Does the passenger need access to different controls to take over? Even in like the Corvette, right? It has that optional like passenger screen thing going on. I'm not even sure exactly what they can control with it,
Do you mean the
AC or
Vet or
radio.
the yeah, in the Porsches, and I think
I think the Porsche, I thought the Corvette has it over there too. I could be wrong, but I've been looking at too many cars for too long, I think. But
yeah,
I
it's yeah. I mean, like most passengers get in and play, like mess around with their iPhone or iPad or whatever. I don't know. Do they need to interface with the car? It's also like just from a fatigue perspective, particularly for a passenger, just to be part of the nice thing about being a passenger is You can be on your screen if you want to, look at your phone or your tablet, but sometimes it's nice not to be staring at a screen. I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, they're building cars that they think people want, but personally, I spend too much of my life staring at a screen, and actually, when I'm driving, is kind of a nice antidote to that.
Yeah, I agree. We're just looking at some more of the photos, just a little different
Yeah,
color. But
I
you're right.
mean,
It's got
I
the
think it looks like a GLC with a slightly different grille, and you'll probably see the tail light treatment and probably this interior on the facelifted version of the gas GLC. So there's definitely a sense here from both BMW and Mercedes of convergence of EV and gas technology. We're not doing the whole here's a crazy looking EV and here's a sensible looking gas car. It's like here are a bunch of sensible vehicles and you then choose if you want EV or gas.
and now this compared to the BMW we just looked at, this is a little bit more upmarket. This isn't going to be
No, I think this
priced.
will compete with iX3 actually. This is
Oh, it is.
GLC. So if you think X3 GLC line up together, so that we haven't got prices or as much kind of US on sale yet for GLC. We might learn more about that in the next week, but these two should line up. iX3, X3 GLC compete, iX3 GLC EV will compete. So
And we have some specs on this. We they didn't give us price, they didn't give us range, where BMW gave us estimated
yeah,
range.
the BMW will come first. The BMW on sale next year. As we record this, Steve is about to jump on a plane tomorrow, and we'll probably learn more about the Mercedes. So maybe we get Steve on next week when he
So
gets back from the show and talk about it.
the Mercedes, we're gonna have a GLC 400 4MATIC and a GLC 300 Plus. It looks like the 400 is gonna come out before the 300. So it looks like late 2026 for the GLC 400, early 27 for the GLC 300. And there are some different packages and options. There's an AMG line, which adds some AMG stuff like the Napa leather and the AMG wheels and the steering wheel. And then there's some increased packages as you would expect with Mercedes, the AMG sport seat package. There's a night package exclusive. There's one called the Pinnacle, the Pinnacle package.
Is that for golfers? But
Yeah. And then there's the Pinnacle Plus line,
oh,
which
so you haven't? So how can you have a Pinnacle Plus? The Pinnacle is the Pinnacle.
I know there's a Pinnacle line and Pinnacle Plus line.
Oh, I don't like that. That's like
And
the special edition Bugattis. It's like you've reached the pinnacle. No, it's not the pinnacle.
uh, comes with that one includes all the options you can imagine, the big sound system, 4D surround sound system, heated and ventilated seats, massage function, heated rear seats, winter package, or you can get the optional vegan package. There is a vegan package
There you go.
as well. Uh, um, I again, the specs we don't really know fully, like as far as range and stuff. The GLC 300 is 369 horsepower. The 400 is 483
I think
horsepower.
also that what we've got here is the European launch, so
Yeah.
we might see a little bit of difference in the US, but it'll be the same strategy as BMW. They'll come first with probably the higher end vehicle because there's more margin and they get the early adopters and people who just want to have the new thing. And then, then a little bit later you release a slightly cheaper version. They even did the same with the gas GLC. So we will see, I think it will be a similar kind of rollout to iX3. And probably by the time this hits the US, we'll have had a facelifted GLC coming into the market as well, which will probably have a similar interior and a similar aesthetic. So we'll end up with everything in the same place. But it's quite exciting. iX3, GLC EV, Germans are kind of finally getting this sorted out. And then of course there's Audi, which
Audi.
is
Let's take a look at the Audi real quick. All right. This is much less to learn here. This is again more of a design direction, I believe, right? This
well,
Audi
this is
Concept C.
yeah, I'm really excited by this. Again, it's a little bit polarizing. So everybody's this is basically what we're looking at is a new design for Audi. which is supposed to base. But let me go back a step. I'm rambling. Let me go back a step. 2024, Audi got rid of, or let's say Audi moved their design director, a guy called Mark Lichter, who I've met a few times. He's a really nice, a super nice guy. He'd been at Audi a few years. There was a feeling that they needed to make a change, and so Mark Lichter got moved on within the group. Is still employed, and they brought in a guy called Massimo Freschella. I hope I pronounced that the surname correctly. Massimo is somebody that I actually got to know a little bit. I used to do some work in my previous life with Jaguar Land Rover and their chief creative officer Jerry McGovern. And Jerry was a guy who took all of the plaudits as the main man. But behind Jerry, and probably the only person at that organization I felt that Jerry really trusted was Massimo Freschella. And Massimo got poached by Audi from Jaguar Land Rover, where he was head of exterior design or head of design, I think, into being the chief for Audi. So lots of people have come out this week and said, well, this thing looks like the Jag. Well, kind of course it does, because you got the same guy
Yeah.
fundamentally in control. Massimo learned at the hand of Jerry McGovern. And if you think about Jaguar Land Rover's design language in recent years, it's all been about minimalism. It's been about stripping away as much as possible, very clean surfacing. Do not over design. Let's have something that's elegant and timeless. Audi had gone in the other direction, where it was like, let's bolt more and more design on. Let's have another slash here. Let's extend the wheel arches to make it look like a Quattro. And in the end, to my eyes at least, it all looked a bit messy. They've hired Massimo. He's come in and he said, right, we're gonna go back to the roots. We're gonna go back to like the 30s, the auto unions, and we're gonna come up with something very simple, very pure. And of course, it looks a bit like the Jag because fundamentally the same guys behind it.
Yeah.
So but I quite like the Jag as well, but I think this Audi is actually an even better execution, partly because there's a lot of obvious Audi in it. You look at the front end and it goes all the way back to the Auto Union races of the 1930s. It's very clean, it's very elegant. It's an EV, and inside as well, very simple. Again, inside it harks back a bit more to the TT at the end of the 90s. I think it came out in 98. Very simple interior, but I
Yeah.
think it looks great.
So, uh, interesting design direction that they're going in. I can see that maybe how it will apply to other vehicles in the lineup. You're right. The interior is much cleaner, much more simplistic. Maybe that doesn't quite end up in their flagship vehicles and SUVs. But I kind of like that it's small and it's clean and it's minimal. Of course, not a design issue, but what I don't like is it's pure EV. That they took their little sports car like Porsche's Macan and said, "Hey, let's just make it an EV." And I just kind of feel like, I'm sorry, not Macan, the Boxster and the Cayman.
Yeah.
And they said, "Hey, let's take the well-balanced little mid-engine sports car and make it an EV." It was like, I don't think you needed to do that.
No, I mean, we talked about that last week, didn't they? That
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people in Porsche now thinking this was the wrong direction, and that's what's interesting about this car. This car is an EV, but underneath you've got obviously Porsche and Audi are fundamentally not quite the same company, but it's all part of Volkswagen Group, or there's a lot of shared ownership. So we think this car is going to be based on the Boxster and Cayman underpinnings. So obviously has spent a lot of money, or the group has spent a lot of money developing this electric architecture for Cayman and Boxster. Now I think what we're going to see with this car is Audi adopting it, just like they do with the Q5 and the Macan. Now we're going to see it with this with this coupe. So they're saying it's somewhere. Everybody's saying it's the new TT. Well, it's also kind of the new R8 because it's
Yeah.
really big. It's actually bigger than the R8. Now, concept cars can be bigger because sometimes you just want to have more presence. So expect it to be bigger than the outgoing TT and sit price wise somewhere between a TT and an R8 and be based on a lot of the technology and hardware of the new Boxster and Cayman, in the same way also that the Audi GT e-tron is the same, shares a lot with the Porsche Cayman, Porsche, not Cayman, the Taycan. Sorry, brain's gone on
Yeah.
Friday morning. So it looks like it's going to be made. I think it looks terrific. I know you don't 100% agree.
I mean, I'm okay with the design. I don't hate the design, although I do like the R8 and I like the TT. I just having this concept be the small sports car EV is I look at it and go, it looks good, but you're not going to sell any because people want the small sports car to be a little bit more visceral, maybe a manual transmission and an engine, and just kind of what you'd expect like the Boxster to be. So to do that move to the TT as well, it's like, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
that's
and
what's rubbing me the wrong way, but
maybe, and I think it's too late in the day actually for them to re-engineer everything to
yeah.
fit a gas. And yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the company that would love to say, is there no way that we can kind of cut and shut a bit to, stick the six cylinder back in? And I just don't believe
I
that's
don't think
possible.
they can do it with this platform,
No.
but I do like that it is very different than what like the Cayman looks like, the
Yeah,
the Porsche.
it,
I mean, using the platform, this EV platform, and really mixing it up and changing the style, like I think they did a good job of just making it not sort of a rebadged version of the Porsche.
I was looking back at Massimo's background, and he's ex Ford, ex Kia. He did things like the Kia Soul. I mean, really super talented guy. But he started his career at Bertone, and he's Italian, and started his career at Bertone in Italy. He did something in 1999 called, I don't even Google it, Matt, for the YouTube audience, but it's called the Alfa Romeo Bella. It's an Alfa Romeo concept, but it was the Bertone Bella, and it was kind of hinting at an Alfa Romeo. And when I pull this up, it's funny with designers like how they almost like keep the germ of an idea and then run it their whole career. And yeah, so this is late 90s, and there's a lot of this TT concept in this as well. So again, very clean lines, very clean surfacing, not over
Let's see
elaborate.
if I'm looking at the right car.
Bertone,
Oh,
yeah, if you yeah, that's the Bertone Bella, and if you just click on Google Images, yeah, it's very clean, very kind of, looks a bit 90s, but
yeah.
small wheels by today's taste, but again, very kind of interesting. Yeah, look at that. There's a fair bit of the new concept in that. So I'm excited. I think Audi's design in recent years has kind of gone in the wrong direction. For me, Audis are all about elegant simplicity, really high quality interiors. Interior quality has gone downhill. And I just think if you look at things like the new Q5, it's not an ugly car, but it's just a lot. And I think this is, and I look at some of the Jaguar Land Rovers, and there's that kind of elegant simplicity to them. So I'm quite excited about what
I
Massimo's going
would
to do. I'm a big fan of his design, basically.
I would say I agree with all three of the big three German manufacturers. I just think they kind of lost their way with design. What we've seen recently from BMW, from Audi, and from Mercedes, especially on the EV Mercedes, I just don't love them. I just think they're listen, they work, the aerodynamics, it's super sleek and it
Yeah.
cuts through the air, and I'm sure it's quiet and works, but uh, at the end of the day, it's just I think the engineering just sort of trumped the aesthetics, and people have to like the look before they get in and fall in love with the rest of the car. This kind of the selling process would be like, come take a look at this, and then if you like it, we'll tell you more. Like, will you
Yeah.
drive it, and will you like the specs? Will you like the range? Will you like the performance? Will you like, but it
Yeah,
all
which
starts with that look, right?
correct, which is what Hyundai and others like. I mean, Hyundai took a punt with the Ioniq 5. This was very distinctive.
Yeah.
But and I think with that vehicle, they looked to say, well, actually, we've got to get people through the door. We've got to do something distinctive. And I personally think they pulled it off with that car. And the Ioniq 6, that streamliner aesthetic, doesn't sell nearly as well. And okay, people buy SUVs, not sedans, but really that's because people look at that Ioniq 6 and say, man, not me. Too much of a leap for me. Personally, I like it, but for most people, it's too much of a
Yeah. We
too
talked
much of a
about that
leap.
too. The profile is just looks like a sad face, and I don't
Yeah,
like an upside down banana. But the Ionic 5, look at the success for them.
yeah.
I can't go from here a mile away to the grocery store probably without seeing two of them. I mean,
And
they're everywhere.
the Genesises look great. And I think one things that the Europeans have got, versus some of the Chinese and startup brands is the heritage. And I think Audi's been pretty smart with this to look back in history and not make a prestige, but to have that sense of heritage. Think about the watch industry. Like Rolex doesn't start to kind of reinvent. If they tweak the oyster, they just tweak it. Maybe a different colored face or whatever. And I think the car industry has a lot of that as well. I think we'll see more and more of the kind of the heritage and the essence of the brand. So
Yeah.
it's been a big week. I mean, it's and the auto show next week, and maybe we'll get Steve on at the end of the week. And if he's back, I can't remember exactly what day he gets back.
Yeah, there was more. We kind of ran out of time for it today, but we'll get to it as well. Honda Prelude, for example, that looks interesting. I think it looks good. We'd like to dig into that car a little bit as well to see
Yeah, well,
if
maybe talk about that. Right. So I think that's an interesting, yeah, hybrid meets Type R. It's kind of an interesting car, but
yeah,
yeah, we'll
yeah.
get into that next week.
All right. Well, listen, we're out of time, and I know you've got to run to another meeting, and as do I actually. So it's quick, a quick turnaround. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for listening. Is there anything else we're missing? We'll just wait till here, maybe when
We just
when
should
the
say
team
that
comes back.
we have a video live on the iX3. So check that out on our YouTube channel if you want to
Okay.
see it in all its glory.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for listening. And until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.